Turkey arrests a controversial televangelist. Is this man a dangerous revolutionary or a bizarre playboy? Is the kind of character you could imagine Sacha Baron Cohen lampooning in a movie like Borat?
Adnan Oktar, a Turkish preacher and self-proclaimed author on Islam. Oktar had his own television show in Turkey where he discussed religious topics. The 62-year-old liked to dance.
To listen.
He preaches a feminist revolution within Islam.
Çıkar demiş adam.
But the allegations against Oktar are no joke.
He's also accused of running a criminal gang, money laundering and torturing people. For years, Oktar has been accused of preying on young, wealthy women, using sex and drugs as blackmail to lure them into his organization. And many who wanted to leave say they were forced to stay.
Today, I want to talk about Adnan Oktar. He is a cult leader, and I remember watching a video about his cult years ago on Vice News, and it was so fascinating. He had his own TV channel. It was called A9, and he would have these discussions about religion, and his followers would listen to him, and he had male followers, which he called his lions, and the female followers, which he called his kittens, and they would talk about everything, religion, sometimes politics, Lindsay Lohan, just everything. And when he wasn't preaching, he would make his kittens dance for him. It was really weird. And they would dance to techno music, and he would just stare at them, and they would just stare at him, and it was really intense and almost uncomfortable. And it wasn't exactly what you would expect from a typical Muslim televangelist. Years after the Vice video aired, he got arrested along with hundreds of his co-conspirators or cult members, and he was sentenced to over 1,000 years. And the crimes he was accused of were insane. Recently, though, the case was overturned, and now there's all these conspiracy theories about what really happened and why it was overturned and the whole thing. So I want to do what I usually do on my channel, which is I want to give you guys the facts, then we'll discuss the theories, and then you can decide for yourself. This video is sponsored by SCENTBIRD. I love SCENTBIRD. They've been supporting my channel for a really long time, and I love fragrances, so I love what SCENTBIRD offers, which is a subscription service for very large size samples. Some of my favorite notes are white florals. I love jasmine, orange blossom, tuberose, and then if they mix in fruity, citrusy touches, I'm in heaven. The first one we have is Kensie Rosy Bloom, Granny Smith Apple, White Jasmine, and Sweet Rose. Oh my God. Sweet Rose indeed, but I'm also getting the Granny Smith Apple, but it's like a sweet apple. You know how Granny Smith Apple is usually very tart? You're getting that, but that sweetness is there. And then as it's drying down, you're getting the floral. The next one we have is Versace Eros Parfum. And it is, what does it have in here? It has jasmine, musk, peony, and lemon. Oh, okay. This reminds me of someone. This reminds me of one of my aunts. It's nice, but Auntie, is that you? Oh my God. I'm thinking of like a family lunch when I went to hug her, and she was like, oh my God, you've grown up so much. Oh, nostalgic, but I mean, it's her fragrance. I can't wear it, but it's nice. Usually you'll get a small sample that's like this small. I get about 2 uses out of these kinds, which is not long enough to really know if you like the fragrance. But with this, you get so much more. I always have a SCENTBIRD vial in my purse. SCENTBIRD is usually $17 a month for one of these large sample sizes, but if you use my coupon code, you will get 55% off, which is a little over $7. The link is in the description. You can use my code. I'll also put it here as well. Thank you so much to SCENTBIRD for sponsoring this video. So the whole thing started on July 11th, 2018, when police raided Adnan's villa in the wee hours of the morning. The villa was referred to by Adnan and his followers as the studio because that's where he filmed his TV show. When Turkish police raided the studio, they faced resistance because there was bulletproof iron gates, security system, cameras, and then there was a checkpoint inside with armed guards. The actual villa or mansion was protected from the outside world, and there was kind of a struggle, but eventually the police detained the guards and members of the group. Turkish police ended up raiding 120 different residences that same day, and they arrested 79 people that day. It was a huge operation, and they made a whole show of it, and the police walked each detainee like handcuffed in front of the cameras. And Adnan Oktar and his, quote, kitten in chief, end quote, her name was Didem Urer. She and he attempted to escape during the raid, but they were both captured. His kitten in chief was very loyal to him, even after the arrest. And she would preach a lot on the A9 channel and just basically argue his points and agree with him. She would call him master. And then there was another person. His name was Tarkan Yavas, and he was the deputy. He managed to escape. The cops came out and they said that they were looking for him, and they warned the public that he was armed and dangerous. The charges against Adnan and his followers were insane. There were over 30 charges, including forming a criminal organization, sexual abuse of children, sexual assault, child kidnapping, sexual harassment, blackmailing, false imprisonment, political and military espionage, fraud by exploiting religious feelings, money laundering, violation of privacy, forgery of official documents, opposition to anti-terror law, coercion, use of violence, slander, alienating citizens from mandatory military service, insulting, false incrimination, perjury, aggravated fraud, smuggling, tax evasion, bribery, torture, illegal recording of personal data, violating the law on the protection of family and women, and violating a citizen's rights to get education and participate in politics. Then, during Adnan's perp walk, he was booed and heckled by members of the public. One of them said, "Hey, why don't you call your kittens to help you?" And then he turned to the reporters and he said, "This is a conspiracy by the British deep state." That's when a cop put his hands over Adnan's mouth to shut him up. Months before the raid, one of Adnan's kittens, her name is Ceylan Ozgul, she escaped the compound and spoke out.
Well, joining me now is former Adnan Oktar follower, Ceylan Özgul.
It was literally imprisonment. That's why I couldn't leave. A lot of high-profile people, a lot of really educated people joined this organization.
She said, quote, "This organization is full of filth on the inside. Children aged 7 to 17 are being sexually abused. Some girls have repeatedly been raped. Some kittens carry 2 illegally acquired pistols with them when they hang around in the streets." She said that she joined the group in 2006 and escaped in 2017. "I believed in them," she said. "Then I found myself as their captive. You will soon learn of what big filth we have left behind after you see all the things they have done. I have noticed their activities against the state and their activities abroad. I was emotionally disturbed, so I escaped. I have personally witnessed some of the crimes listed in the arrest warrants. This is a group that conspires against Turkey." And then another kitten, one that was loyal, she came out and she was like, quote, Ceylan Ozgul lived a luxurious life for 15 years. She had the clothes of prominent brands, hundreds of jackets, pants, and shoes, and special feasts and mansions. In the video she posted recently, she is in an average house and average clothes. Could this be the reason for losing that luxurious life? Then she also accused her of being a spy for Britain. And then she said, you didn't have to escape. You were able to leave. You just left. And then Ceylan responds and she goes, is a person free if they have not been to a grocery store in 20 years? If they have not bought medicine from the pharmacy by themselves? If they do not even know what a Turkish lira looks like because the banknotes changed years ago? She said she wasn't even allowed to decide what hairstyle she could wear or how much she was allowed to weigh for 20 years. Then, the day after the raid, remember Tarkan, the deputy that ran and escaped? Well, they found him. They found him and they captured him. It was then revealed that 45 complaints of sexual abuse were made against Adnan and his cult members. Of the 45 complaints, 17 were minors at the times the crimes were committed, and their ages were from 11 to 17. One girl who was 11 years old, she was brought in by her mom. Her mom willingly joined. She brought her daughter with her, and then her daughter got subjected to this abuse. But that's the thing though, right? People would join willingly. They would think it was one way. Then once they got there, they realized this is nothing like what we thought, but then they couldn't leave. That was the thing, is you could join very easily, but you could not leave. And if they did attempt to leave and they were caught attempting escape, the punishment would be so severe so as to deter them from doing it again, and also other people from not getting the same idea. One person said, quote, no one in the group was able to meet with anyone outside alone. There was always at least 2 more witnesses from the group. The girls who were suspected to plot an escape were transported in Akhtar's armored cars, while another car full of armed brothers would follow it. He always tried to alienate the girls from their families, sowing seeds of hostility with their parents. He wanted them in a position that they would never think that they could return to their families. That was the thing. The way he would sow these seeds of hostility and make them feel like they couldn't go back was with blackmail. Okay, this is very Jeffrey Epstein-like, because I'll discuss it later, but all of his followers were wealthy and powerful, and he made sure to pick them. He would film them with hidden cameras performing sexual acts or being forced to perform sexual acts. And then if they tried to leave, they would show them this footage and be like, we're going to release this and destroy you. And so they felt like trapped due to the blackmail. And then the investigation revealed that one of those people is a businessman named Murat Atik. He was appointed head of the Turkish state railways, but he was forced to step down just 10 days into the job when investigators claimed that he was a follower of Adnan's. Adnan Akhtar had compromising information on businessmen, senior politicians, and this is going to play in later, okay, when we talk about some of the weird legal things that kept happening. Regarding the blackmail, it says investigators found photos depicting sexual acts involving members of the organization purportedly taken secretly at Akhtar-owned properties for the purpose of blackmail. It also revealed WhatsApp messages involving male and female members of the group in which they were given instructions to get used to anal sex. And then if they tried to leave, these videos would be brought up and shown to them, and they're like, do you want us to reveal these or do you want to stay? And they stayed. One former member, her name is BERIL Kongakul. Okay, we're just going to call her Beryl. She was said to be Akhtar's favorite kitten. Beryl said, quote, this pervert was raised in Ankara. When he was young, he used to hang out in front of shanty nightclubs there. The physical appearance of those nightclub women had stayed in his mind. He made us look like those women at shanty nightclubs he saw in his youth. There were certain surgeons that worked for him. No woman was allowed to decline this cosmetic surgery. And then he gave them all the same look. He made them all have large breasts, small waists, plump lips, and many of them had bleach blonde hair. And it's also rumored that Adnan himself has had plastic surgery to look younger. You can see where he seemed to age and then like magically he looks way younger. According to BERIL, she said that he has been sexually impotent since 1998, but he remains as a pervert. And what are some of the things that he did? Well, she said that he had sex slaves who had to serve him topless. She said 2 topless women would hold the newspaper that he would read or his telephone when he spoke, while another one would put his sock on before heating up his shoes with a blow dryer. He was beating us, cursing at us, abusing us, forcing us into sexual intercourse. We were forced to call him my love, whatever he does. He was also abusing children. He was defending that sexual intercourse is allowed after anyone is older than 7 years old. He was sexually harassing minors while making them wear miniskirts. He thinks that he is greater than all the prophets, but the only times that he talked about religion was when he was on TV. We never heard him mention Allah even once at other times. I tried to escape 5 times, but he had 60 armed guards, hundreds of cameras and jammers in that villa. It was impossible to run away. In addition to armed guards, he had doctors. One of those doctors he codenamed Dr. Mengele, or Mengele, like Joseph Mengele, the Nazi doctor, like he nicknamed him that doctor.
The question is, why do these people, speaking on behalf of science, hide the scientific facts? The theory of evolution, which is the ideology of Darwinism, claims that there is a struggle in life. The stronger will eliminate the weakest one, and then this way the humanity will improve. The theory of evolution legitimize all kind of oppression, all kind of bloodshed. This way and this way we observe all the wars, all the bloodshed, all the oppression, all the racism in the world today.
And that doctor's job was to administer routine HIV and other tests on the kittens. When the cops raided this doctor's home, they found HIV and hepatitis test kits, polygraph tests, voice analyzing microphones, and advanced medical equipment. Then there was another doctor that was his right-hand man, and this was Dr. Oktar Babuna. Now, when I first was looking into Dr. Oktar Babuna, I was like, oh my God, this guy seems fun. Like, there was this party and some guy was singing that song, I'm blue, da-ba-dee-da-ba-die.
To listen. I'm blue, da-ba-dee.
And the doctor's like doing the robot, and it was like, oh my God, this is so fun. And then he was singing, I will survive.
First I was afraid. I was petrified, kept thinking I could never live without you by my side. But then I spent so many nights thinking how you did me wrong. How you strong.
It was like, oh, he's chill. But then he wasn't chill. He was very not chill. He was charged and found guilty of being a member of a gang, sexual abuse of a minor, and sexual abuse generally. He ended up being sentenced to 186 years. Then there was another high-ranking member of the cult. Her name was AYCA Pars. She was known as the, quote, most senior kitten. She was part of his cult for decades. She was arrested, but she decided to cooperate with police for a plea deal. And this is a quote from her. She says, there were 30 kittens. He would pick one to beat, not just by slapping them, but he would drag girls around and cut their hair. Religion was only a facade. He wanted all women to stare at him as if they are in love with him. If they failed to do it properly, he would cut the live broadcast for a break and torture the woman to punish her. When the girls would begin to cry in pain, he would say they were crying because they love him so much. Okay. Then there was the recruiter. He was arrested. His name is Ali Emre Bukage. I know I said the last one. Let's just call him Ali, okay? He was a recruiter for the cult. He was also accused of sexually abusing women in the cult. He denied all of this. All the men involved denied all of this. Some of the kittens flipped. Some remained loyal. Cult leader came out and he was like, I am a humble man. I only make 3,500 Turkish liras a month, which is about $700. And the thing is, though, he was always wearing designer clothes. All the people around him were wearing designer clothes. His home was very opulent. He owned a TV network. And when they confiscated items at the home, they confiscated over 1 million Turkish liras. They confiscated 6 truckloads of historical artifacts and antiques, 69,000 birth control pills, 400 USB flash drives, 96 pistols, 23 rifles, and over 3,000 bullets. And they confiscated over 800 fossils from 200 million years ago that were worth $10 million. To understand how we got here, we need to go back. We need to go back to 1956. Adnan Oktar was born on February 2nd, 1956. So he's an Aquarius. He was actually born to a affluent and secular family. It wasn't until he went to college in Istanbul, he went to a fine arts university, that he became really interested in religion. But not the typical thing that was going on at the time, but he was really interested in science and Islam. He ends up dropping out of college, but he starts to preach to these other wealthy college students, and he starts to have a following. And they called themselves the Adnan Silar, which was like basically the Adnanists, right? So they really saw him as their, holy teacher, maybe even more than that. In 1986, he had his first run-in with the law. He was arrested and charged with making propaganda with the aim of weakening or destroying national sentiments. They saw him as a threat to the status quo because he was from a wealthy family. All his followers were from wealthy families. So he was seen as a threat. They end up not just arresting him, but they put him in the criminal ward of a mental institution, and they end up diagnosing him with paranoid schizophrenia and obsessive compulsive disorder. And he feels like this was not because he was actually mentally ill, but because he was seen as a political prisoner. He even talks about it when he was way older.
En şiddetli hastaların konduğu servis, kapalı servis. Ama hastalar dışarı bahçeye çıkıyordu o dönemde. Evlerine de gidiyorlardı. Hafta sonları evlerine gönderiyorlardı. İstediği gibi telefon ediyorlardı. Zaten gidenler görürler. Bütün hastanın bahçesinde gezer hastanedeki hastalar. Bilinir yani. Evet. Kapalı servisin hastaları da gezerler. Bakın o devirde bir belgem. Başhekimin talimatıyla. Hastanın Medya Oktar, annesi Kenan Oktar, kardeşi Vehbi Kahveci avukatı haricinde kesinlikle ziyareti ve telefon görüşmesi yasaktır. Ayrıca kesinlikle dışarı çıkarılmayacaktır. Bir tek bana uygulanan bir yöntemdi bu.
Like he never got over that. When he got out of that mental institution, he went even harder. He started an organization, a foundation, and the acronym for it was BAV. It was meant to be like a science research foundation, but really everyone says it was a cult. He controlled everything about his members' lives. He isolated them from their families, and of course, he took their money. He claimed, not directly, but indirectly, but there is this thing called the Mahdi in Islam. It's like this, it's kind of like the second coming of Christ, but the Muslim version. So there's going to be a divine person who comes down who's going to guide the people until the end times. This is going to happen like really close to the end times. And he was alluding to the fact that he was the Mahdi, but he didn't say that outright. He would say that the Mahdi is going to be from the exact same town that he was from. And then he would say that it wasn't going to be like the traditional end times war that you hear about, but it's going to be a digital war. This person is going to have a platform just like he did. He's going to have media, and it's going to be a digital warfare. Like, it was basically all his followers felt like he was the Mahdi. There's even a book written about him called The Mahdi Wears Armani. Okay. So, and of course you had the usual cult leader formula, I am special, as are you, the world is ending, like they're all wealthy, give me your money. And then of course the freaky sex stuff, right? Always, no matter what religion, no matter where you go, it's the same fucking shit. Some people saw him as a Muslim feminist because he advocated for women's rights and independence, and he was very against the more modest thing when it came to the clothing. He would say that in the Quran, the veil is a bikini. Okay. He also said that alcohol is not forbidden. Only wine is forbidden. So we can drink vodka and whiskey, and also cocaine. He was into cocaine. And then in the 90s, he got arrested for possession of cocaine. So he claimed that it was a setup. He said that the security agents planted the cocaine in his food, and he was eventually acquitted. Now, this is a recurring theme that you're going to see. He'll get arrested, but he either gets acquitted, the charges get dropped, or he gets convicted, but then there's an appeal and he wins the appeal. And it happened so many times. It got to a point where people were terrified of his lawyers. Then other people thought that there was something going on with the appellate court, the judges there. In this most recent case, the one where he got over 1,000 years, it just recently got overturned, but there's still some things, we'll talk about it later, but I'm just saying it's like a thing. Speaking of his lawyers, there was one of his followers, an ex-follower, that caught the wrath of his lawyers. Her name is EBRU. Okay, she was a former cult member, and he discovered her in 1994 when he saw her on TV. And she said, quote, "He saw me on the screen and went crazy. He even said, 'I saw you in the newspaper, on TV. I liked it very much. Take your pajamas and live with me in my wonderful mansion. Come here. I will offer you the best conditions. You will wear the best brands. Your life will be luxurious.'" She says soon she realized the group actually had nothing to do with religion, and she somehow managed to leave, but her leaving enraged Adnan. She said that he became obsessed with her. He sued her for defamation over 300 times. He harassed her. He made her life in Turkey so miserable, she ended up fleeing to the United States. She's quoted as saying, "If you shot it as a movie, they would say it's too exaggerated. They wouldn't watch it." Then there were Adnan's books, and he claimed to write over 300 books that were translated in over 73 languages, but one of his ex-followers disputes that.
Did he write the books?
No, he didn't.
Who wrote the books?
His followers, his students, like me.
Interesting.
He wrote these books under a pen name called Harun Yahya. That was his pen name, but really that was him. And although other people wrote the book, whatever. So the first book he wrote, or one of the first books actually, was called The Holocaust Deception. And it was basically a book that denied the Holocaust. But then 10 years later, he rebranded into this tolerant Muslim feminist character, and he wrote another book called The Holocaust Violence, where he acknowledged the genocide, and he denied ever writing the earlier book, The Holocaust Deception, although it's pretty much like proven that he wrote that too. Same thing with the Masons. He had this book against the Freemasons that was called The Global Freemasonry, and he was talking about how they're running the world and destroying, Turkey and the world and the whole thing. But then when he rebranded as this tolerant guy that got along with anyone, he invited the Freemasons from the States on his show, and it was all very nice and polite and wonderful.
Büyük Üstadı Timothy Hogan ve Amerika Colorado'dan Mason ve Tapınakçı misafirlerimiz var.
Sayın Paul Dickerson, welcome. Ve Sayın Scott Emmerman, welcome.
Şeref verdiniz, onur verdiğiniz, sevinç duyduk. Sizleri aramızda görmek bizim için büyük mutluluk.
We
We are very happy to be here.
Yes, it's been too long.
The one thing he never changed his view on was the theory of evolution. He still hated Darwinism, and he wrote this book. This was like his most, what do they call it? The magnum opus, his book that he was the most proud of, and it was called The Atlas of Creation. So remember the $1 million fossil collection that I told you about? Yeah, this was all about the theory of evolution. He felt like he had evidence from these fossils that proved that there was no such thing as evolution. And so in this book, The Atlas of Creation, he had pictures, but some of the fossils were not real. They were like from another artist who recreated fossils like replicas, but he had them in the book as if they were real. And the book, it really made a lot of rounds because he sent tens of thousands of copies of his book unsolicited to colleges, schools in Europe, in the United States. I mean, there's even a photo of Steven Seagal, the actor from the action movies, with the book. He met him and he gave him the book, and there's pictures of him with the book. The book was even spotted on the bookshelf of Christine Lagarde, who is the European Central Bank president and the former chair of the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. I don't know if she read the book or what, but it was spotted in the background while she was on a live video. And the thing is, the book was ridiculed by scientists who basically were not nice about what they said. One geneticist, his name was Adam Rutherford, he called the book a whole different flavor of stupid. Richard Dawkins, he came out and he didn't have nice things to say about him at all.
Adnan Oktar. He's an extremely naive creationist. He's also a very unpleasant man. Nobody could say that he doesn't have balls.
In 1999, Adnan Oktar gets arrested again. He was charged with using threats for personal benefit and creating an organization with the intent to commit a crime. And his cult, the BAV, was accused of using blackmail and sex traps to make money. The cult was accused of using the kittens to lure young, wealthy male college students to join the cult, or at least to attend an event, and they promised sexual favors in return. During those sexual favors, they were filmed, and then that was used as blackmail. So the members, if they did join, they couldn't leave. But then the case mysteriously went away because all the victims dropped the charges, and it just went away. But in 2008, almost 10 years later, it came back. The case was opened again, but he managed to get away again. The victims didn't retract their statements, and he was convicted, but there was an appeal. He won the appeal, was overturned, and he was released. Remember, I told you this keeps happening. He even if he gets convicted, he never stays in there for too long. People are saying he's going to get out soon because nobody has faith that he stays in jail for too long. Remember, I told you everyone's afraid of his lawyers, and he was very litigious. It says here that he filed more than 5,000 defamation lawsuits from 2005 to 2015. More than 5,000. Okay, and he managed to get many websites banned in Turkey. Then he also got WordPress.com banned because it refused to remove users' websites that he claimed were libelous. In 2011, he started his TV channel, A9. 3 years after the channel was created, it started to get significant backlash. He started going at it with government leaders, some of the religious leaders in the government who criticized him. They were like, one of them was like, this guy has mental illness and this show is ridiculous. And he was all, oh yeah, really? You guys drink alcohol and keep it under the table and you pretend to be religious. Like basically he exposed them, things that, maybe were true, and they were not happy. Immediately things changed. They fined him several times. They would ban him. They would say like, you can't show, like you have to skip 5 episodes of your show. What really pushed this into overdrive was in 2018, this is when the shit's about to hit the fan. There is a man, he's a Turkish man, and he hasn't spoken to his daughters in a really long time. He has 2 teenage daughters. All of a sudden, he sees his daughters on channel A9. Turns out their mom joined the cult and took her daughters with her. And the father couldn't find them until he saw them on the TV show. So he goes to police, and they end up basically ordering for the mother to give him custody of the girls. The mother then speaks out on channel A9 with her daughters next to her, and they're like, basically, I don't know exactly what they said, but it looks like they're saying that they're fine and this is, they're here willingly and there's nothing wrong. But the courts end up awarding the father custody of the girls, and they issue a restraining order against Adnan to stay away from the girls. And it was literally a few months after all this happened that he was raided and his followers were arrested. And then it was time for the trial. And the indictment was 499 pages long. All the lurid details that I mentioned earlier were set forth, and he denied everything. He said, quote, "I have 1,000 girlfriends because there's an overflowing love in my heart for women. Love is a human quality. It is a quality of a Muslim. I am extraordinarily potent," he said, because, you know, it came out that he was, you know, basically impotent. And so he really wanted to make sure that people thought that he was not impotent. One of the girls, she testified, and she said that the women were forced to take birth control, all of them. And remember, I told you earlier, they found 69,000 birth control pills. Adnan came out and was like, well, the birth control pills were for their acne and to regulate their periods. Had nothing to do with me forcing them to take it. It was like they needed it to clear their skin. In the end, he was found guilty and sentenced to 1,075 years. He was 64 years old, and many of his followers were sentenced too. They got hundreds of years. Basically, they all got life. But then, as has happened plenty of times before, the case was overturned. Okay, it says here that the Court of Appeals said that the local court had ruled on an unopened case which was unlawful. And the appeal court ended up releasing 68 of the defendants, but they kept Adnan and 15 other high-profile defendants in jail. Of the 68 released, 50 were rearrested and convicted. And as of now, as of me filming this, Adnan is still in jail. Those are the facts. Now, let's discuss the theories. The first thing that people talk about are, what are his connections with the appellate court? Is it that his lawyers are so good, or is there something going on with that court? Because his lawyers, they may be good, but they can't prevent him from getting convicted. They're either blackmailing people to drop the charges, but when the charges aren't dropped and they're able to get a conviction, the appeals court always turns it over. Why? Why? Remember, he had a lot of powerful, wealthy people that were his followers. Could one of them, or more than one of them, have been on the appellate court as a judge? Some people think so. Some people think so, because that's like the last line of defense, and then even if all else fails, they flip it over. So that's a conspiracy that people have. Then remember in the beginning when he was like, it's a deep state British conspiracy. Now, if you're a nerd like me and you studied history, then you know the history between the Ottoman Empire, you know, what Turkey used to be, and the colonial British, and that whole, it's like, woo, goes way back. So when he says it's a deep state British conspiracy, that's saying a lot in the context of where he is. And the thing is, though, is it a conspiracy, or is he just a freak and the people told police and then the police tried to do something about it? I don't know, because the victims, I believe them. I mean, if you just look at the videos where they're sitting there listening to him and dancing, they don't look happy. They don't look like they want to be there, you know, and when they do laugh, it's very forced and weird.
Olduğunu bilmiyorsunuz. O sıkar demiş adam.
And the guys are just like, like it seems like there's blackmail material and they all are terrified to leave. And so Is it a British conspiracy? I don't think so. I think he is a freak and they are trying to get away. But then again, that's my conspiracy theory. So then the other thing people talk about is what's with the flip? The flip from being anti-Jew and anti-Freemason to being pro-Israel and hosting the Freemasons on his channel and them having really nice pleasantries and conversation. Well, what was that about? And people say that this was a way to kind of gain power, maybe stick it to the current government that he was always getting arrested and having problems with. Maybe this was a way to gain international support and get on a larger platform and look like a reformer and kind of go with the flow of what people are saying in the majority of the world, right? He's on the internet. Maybe he feels like, well, everyone's doing that approach like I did, but let me switch it up. You know, then other people are like, he's connected with them and it is a conspiracy and they are running the, like there's that whole element of it. But I really don't know what he was thinking. It seems like, I don't know if you can apply logic to this guy. Jaylon, she said that it was just a tactic, that he found people who were willing to support him because when he goes to Israel and says, I am a Muslim religious leader and I'm pro-Israel, they're like, oh, and he's like, I'm trying to foster this pro-Israeli sentiment. They're going to welcome him with open arms. And she said he was just going where he was, you know, celebrated, essentially. And so that's the whole thing with that. I'm not sure what's up with the Freemasons, but it's like he never changed his stance on the theory of evolution. So maybe there was nothing to benefit from doing that. Like, I guess he didn't care about the scientists who believed in it and who were mocking him. You know, I don't know. It was very weird. But I really wanted to research this. I just wanted to research it because I was fascinated by it, especially because I found out about his recent arrest and how it was overturned. And that's when I was like, oh my God, what? Anyway, I would love to know what you guys think about this crazy case. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I want to thank SCENTBIRD for supporting my channel so many times. Thank you to SCENTBIRD. Please check them out. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye. Don't join a cult.